an echo in the canyon, a reflection on the sound. When I'm really looking, I can hear you all around.
Welcome. It's good to be back. It's good to have you back to the art of poetry and then some. I want to offer a couple of comments first before I introduce our esteemed special guest, an LGBTQ historian. Oh, and that's a wonderful thing as I'm learning. What is it about friendship and community that sustains us and allows us to last, really, in most of our endeavors? There's a quote from Stephen Dietz, a very good playwright. It comes from Sacramento in the 90s. He wrote a play called Alone. It's about the AIDS crisis. In a chaotic world, friendship is the most elegant, the most lasting way to be useful. We are each of us a living testament to our friends' compassion and tolerance, humor and wisdom, patience and grit. Friendship, not technology, is the only thing capable of showing us the enormity of the world. Welcome, my friend.
Yeah, welcome to you.
And historian, and a social justice advocate, and promoter. I have no idea how long your vita has grown. Because you're so modest. That's the thing I loved about you from the beginning, John.
Oh, that's sweet. Thank you, Frank.
Your modesty, humility, and mostly your mental acuity, which allows you to do everything and then some. Mm-hmm. Really, I'm heart touched today, especially that you would be back. Thanks for coming back. You were here 3 years ago for a Pride show in June. It was wonderful. Mm-hmm. And we had a lot of history then when we talked. And especially a dear, dear departed friend now, David Knapp, who was instrumental in both of our lives.
Yes, he was.
As mentors.
Mm-hmm. As a mentor, absolutely. I still use his words of wisdom every day in my life, and I've structured, as we were talking earlier, I've structured so much of the final stages of my life based on how he lived his life with his philanthropy and how he was just so generous to the community and anyone that had troubles or whatever. He was
anyone
in he
need
was always there,
trouble. And he keeps giving, as you pointed out, after death.
Posthumously, I know. It was the reason why the Boy Scout camp was able to be kept intact is because of his posthumous gift.
Can you imagine?
No, it's just incredible. Mm-hmm. So
that's community.
Yeah, it really is.
And it's deep friendship. Oh, that feels so good to recognize that.
Yes.
And keeps us going.
Yes, it does.
Wow.
Yeah, it's fun to be active.
And active you are. And maybe at the end we'll get to slowing down a little bit, but meanwhile, hit us with your best shot.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I wanted to talk about today is I've been giving a walking tour of downtown New Haven.
I took it.
Yes, you did. And it's about a mile through all 9 squares. New Haven is a very historic city, among the first planned cities in the country in 1639. And so what I call this is New Haven's Closet, 400 years of queer history in the Elm City. And so and the way that, how it came about was in 2015 through the International Festival.
Oh,
You know, I was always looking for what's the queer angle in the International Festival. I mean, you know, so many queer people are artistic,
Yeah.
and yet there never seemed to be this focus of an LGBTQ plus focus within the festival. And so I had all these pieces of history that were always coming to me from founding the New Haven Pride Center, which was my master's thesis in 1995, is what we used to start the New Haven Pride Center.
huge accomplishment.
Yeah, it was.
Just huge.
It took over much of my life for many, many years, for 25 years when I was on the board.
Wow.
But we discovered that the New Haven Pride Center, and through my master's thesis, that New Haven has a very vibrant queer community. And even during the time when no one had ever quantified the queer community, and that's what I had done with my master's thesis, and discovered that there were, this is in 1995, there were 40 queer or queer-friendly groups operating within Southern Connecticut, controlling $2.3 million worth of annual budgets and having memberships or employees of 1,900 people. It was the very first time that the queer community had been quantified in Connecticut.
Wow.
And it made front page news across the state. And out of that, with that kind of momentum, we started the first queer center in New Haven's history, the third in Connecticut behind Hartford, which has since closed, and the Triangle Community Center down in Norwalk, which is still in business. So there's two queer centers now operating in Connecticut. And the New Haven Pride Center, I'm now no longer on the board after 25 years, but I'm an emeritus president there. So
Wonderful.
I still am very much involved in the Pride Center.
And it's a going thing.
Oh, it's doing very well.
That's great.
And providing resources for all kinds of vulnerable communities.
Yep.
You don't have to be gay in order to go in there. And there are people that come in that use the food bank, the clothing bank, that come for meetings, that use the space, that just are looking for a friendly place to go. And so I really am just is so impressed with what people that have come after me are continuing to build.
Open to all.
Oh, it is. It's open to all and very
So
visible.
impressive. Yeah.
So, but what happened was, so many people were coming up to me when I was so involved in as a leadership role, giving pieces of queer history in the area and saying, did you know this happened over here, or, you know, talking about the businesses and whatever. And I started gathering all these things. And in 2015 with the International Festival, I said, you know, there's so many walking tours going on around New Haven. Why don't we do a queer walking tour? And we've had 20 queer sites or activities or events that had happened. Well, now I'm up over 100.
You're kidding.
No, it has just blossomed.
Wow.
And so what happened was I've now put it into a presentation form and have given it at several places. And I'm still doing the walking tour, and we're signed up to give it again this summer.
Oh, that's
but, you know,
wonderful.
I think the thing about Connecticut that's so amazing is that I want to talk about this just briefly. Connecticut is such a queer-friendly place. It's a place that anyone who is different, and we're talking about a lot of different people that are not white and heterosexual.
And a lot of differences.
A lot of differences. And Connecticut embraces this. We are the land of steady habits. And we, that's one of our strengths, is that we are progressive, we're small, so, you know, and I want to just give you a little list of some of the things that have happened in Connecticut related to the queer community. We were the second state in 1971 to decriminalize homosexual behavior. 1971. The second state.
Wow.
We were the third state in 1991 to offer civil rights protections to queer people. The third state. In 1997, we were the fourth state to specifically protect LGBTQ plus youth. We were the first state in 1999 to raise the rainbow flag over a state capitol building. the first in the nation.
Wow.
We were the second state in the country to offer civil unions in 2005, and then subsequently, we were the second state in the country to offer gay marriage, and it was through the legislature
Yeah.
and not the courts.
Yep.
California was the second at first, but then they rescinded it,
Yeah.
and then Connecticut became the second state to offer gay
And
marriage.
we're so proud.
And I am extremely proud of that. And in 2018, we were the first state to protect trans and incarcerated prisoners. So we really have this history that says everyone belongs in this state. And I am so proud to call myself a Connecticut resident.
Yeah.
And that, and proud to be out as an out gay man.
Oh, Connecticut. Really,
So-
think about it.
It is really an incredible place to be.
Open arms, open
Yeah.
doors.
I believe that the fact that we were the second state in the country to offer gay marriage,
Yeah.
that we became the Rolling Stone, and then look at what happened around the world. So, knowing some of that, what I've done is I've gathered all these activities, events, people, things that have happened that are queer-centric in downtown New Haven, and I've compiled them into a list of what I call the top 10 queer things about New Haven, and those are the things that I want to talk about today.
That's great.
And I can only touch really about a few things because there are so many. But the first one that we have, the first queer thing about New Haven is the city of New Haven. The city of New Haven, and we have a map that shows that we were the first planned city in the country. We are designed around all 9 squares, 8 streets, 9 squares, and queer things have happened all around in all of the 9 squares. I don't know if we have the picture of the map, the 1641 map that we can show. Oh, here it is, yes. And you can see there's 8 streets that were designed, and the one in the lower left-hand corner is actually where the New Haven Pride Center is now.
Yeah.
It's in the 9th square. But all of those squares are designed around a center, 16-acre National Historic Monument, the New Haven Green, which I think, every town has a beautiful green, but I'm particularly fond of New Haven's. I think it's one of the most beautiful greens in all of New England.
I agree. And open space there is so friendly
Yes.
and welcoming to do so many things in that open space.
Yes, so it is an incredible place. And there are so many things that have happened all around that area. And so the second part of the top 10 queer things is the New Haven Pride Center. Now, I've got up here the New Haven Pride Center, which we've talked about a little bit earlier. One of the things that I'm so proud of is a group that I started actually in 1998. It's the first support group of its kind, believed to be the first supportive group of its kind in the country to support LGBTQ people that have an intellectual disability. And so, if we can go back to the book cover, that would be helpful. This book cover is, this is a book that I've written. It's the second edition on the people with that are LGBTQ that identify as having an intellectual disability. We also support people that come that have that have autism, that are neurodiverse. We have people that come with a variety of different disabilities, but the primary focus is on intellectual disabilities. And since that, we've helped start groups around the country, and there's a group that's meeting now that's really taken the lead out of Massachusetts called the Rainbow Support Group of Massachusetts. And they're doing research and they've compiled these groups. We now have over 45 groups meeting virtually every 2 months from around the world. People from Australia, groups in Australia, New Zealand, all around the country, Canada, and England, and other countries too.
virtually. So it's bringing all of them together.
Yes, it is. And and there's power in numbers. And as we
Oh,
say,
yeah.
history belongs to those who write it. And we are trying desperately to write our history. We will not be erased. And certainly we're seeing that in what's going on right now in the political
yeah.
realm, that they're trying to erase trans people and queer people, and we will not be erased. We've been in the closet, never again.
Never again.
We will never do that. So I'm just so proud of the fact that, and I think that this is another example. We have support from the state of Connecticut, Department of Developmental Services, from agencies that provide support, bringing people to the Queer Center. And I'm just so proud to say that this is happening here in New Haven, Connecticut.
Good old land of steady habits.
It so is. Well, as what we do when I give the walking tour, we do a linear, we have to go and I talk about the things that are going as we're standing in front of them.
Yeah.
And so right down the street, as we move to the third thing that's queer about New Haven, is Arena Square. And if we can put that there was a picture of, this is the FBI building, but prior to that it sits on a one square city block called, it sits on a one square city block that's referred to as Arena Square because the New Haven Arena sat on there. It was a 6,000 seat arena where the New Haven Nighthawks had played, and the circus would come in, and there would be various concerts. And one of the very last concert that showed on that performed there in 1972 was a young Elton John, queer icon, and he was there. But prior to him in 1972, in December 10, 1967, was a Jim Morrison, and that's who we have right here. And he was being arrested because he was mouthing off, and as many people of our generation know, that this is a very historic, this put New Haven on the map, certainly the musical map, because he was mouthing off to the police.
Yeah.
And
Shows it.
And it shows it, and he was arrested and bloodied. And guess what? His revenge was he wrote a song called Peace Frog. And the Peace Frog song goes, blood in the streets in the town of New Haven. And I do have the full lyric.
Wonderful.
It's
Yay, Jim Morrison.
yeah.
my
It
God.
was somewhere in here, but it's blood in the streets in the town of New Haven. Blood stains the palm trees of Venice, and it's all about blood. And it actually was a very. The song was never released as a single. It was released as part of an album on the Morrison Hotel, and it was actually a poem that he had written about abortion.
Oh.
And it was involving blood, and so he just modified that and came up with this song, and we still hear it on the radio today.
Holy.
But Jim Morrison, that a lot of people don't realize, he was sexually fluid. And he had relationships with both men and women. And just recently, my husband and I, we went to Paris to go to the Père Lachaise Cemetery, one of the most famous cemeteries in the world. And Jim Morrison is buried there, and he's buried in a back corner. And we actually had to wait in line in order to get up to see it. It is the single most visited site in the famous Père Lachaise Cemetery that is got Oscar Wilde
Yep.
is interred there, and Sarah Bernhardt, Moliere, many famous people.
Very famous.
And Jim Morrison's is the single most visited gravesite.
How did he get there?
Well, he died when he had at age 27. They said it was a heart attack, but it really was. He was abusing many substances and alcohol, and just really a tragic ending for such a brilliant person. But we claim him as a bisexual person, so that's very exciting. And the fact that he was there in such a memorable event is really something else. But the FBI came after that. And the FBI, which has its own storied history too, and let me just talk a minute about some of the things that went on with the FBI there. You think about why does Connecticut have an FBI office? You would think New York, Boston, Philadelphia. But Connecticut, the highest per capita income in the country, we have many white-collar crimes, and we have a fair amount of gang violence in Connecticut, along the Housatonic Valley and the Thames River Valley.
I've been reading about that recently. The Naugatuck, yeah.
And so they have offices all around the state too. And what happens is you think if you have been a victim of a hate crime where somebody calls you a name, that's derogatory against who you are as an individual, not just gay, but if it's, you're of a person of color or an elderly person, you can certainly call your local police, but you can call the state police, you can call the FBI, and they are tracking those. And so they really want to hear from vulnerable communities because that's what they're there to help protect. Now, the FBI also has a very interesting dynamic. Who was it built by? J. Edgar Hoover, who was a closet case.
Yeah.
He was with his partner, Clyde Tolston, and they were partners. Everyone knew them as a couple. They're buried just 5 plots away from each other in Congressional Cemetery in D.C. I've been to it. And he was vehemently homophobic.
Oh,
as
gosh.
As a gay person, he was vehemently homophobic, and he used it against people.
Always.
Yeah. But it was really interesting. He left his entire fortune to his spouse, Clyde.
Yeah.
And then Clyde died several years later, but they're buried just five spots away from each other in Congressional Cemetery.
What an anecdote.
It is. It's a fascinating story.
Yeah.
And it's really unfortunate. He was alcoholic, but he really built that. Before it was even the FBI, it was another iteration. And
Well, I was on the tour.
yeah,
and I
that's
was-
right. I remember.
I was amazed to be walking through the offices of the FBI, thanks to one of the members who let us in,
Yeah.
who actually was on the tour,
Yes.
and provided a little golden nuggets too.
Yeah.
But wow, was there some other story about the FBI too? That was,
Well, there is. They brought this up because I said, did you guys know that when we were having the tour, I said, did you know that this famous event with Jim Morrison happened here? And a lot of people didn't know that, or know that it was the Arena. It's still referred to as Arena Square because it's one square city block.
yeah.
But they have a plaque to Jim. The second time I went back there, they showed me that they have a plaque of commemorating Jim Morrison's arrest down in the lower level, the basement. When
Wow.
you come off the elevator, you can see it. But they're the ones that pointed out to me that Jodie Foster played in Silence of the Lambs. She played an FBI agent. And they pointed that out to me. But just shortly after she came to, she was a Yale undergrad, and of course I was mesmerized by Starstruck to know that there was this movie star going to Yale as a young 18-year-old freshman.
Wow.
And she was actually in a play at the Educational Center for the Arts, which is just a half a block away from the FBI building. It was an old synagogue, and since is now part of the ACES, Area Cooperative Educational System, ACES, and it's kind of like their performing arts center. And she was in that in a show called Getting Out, and it was about a lesbian prisoner who was just released from prison and returns home to Kentucky and tries to have a normal life, but her past keeps intruding. And she was in this play by Marcia Norman, celebrated play. And at the very beginning, I had bought tickets to this show. This was in 1981, in March of 81, just a few days before President Reagan was shot. And if you know the story about the connection between Jodie Foster and John Hinckley, he was mesmerized by her performance in Taxi Driver, where she played a 13-year-old sex worker, and with Robert De Niro. And he kept trying, and what happens during the show is the character tries to impress upon this young sex worker about to kill the president, and so he shot President Reagan trying to impress Jodie Foster. And after that happened, you could not get a ticket to the show. It was just pandemonium, and it was really exciting to go and see that. But that happened there.
That's a stunning sidebar. That is so good, John.
It's a good one.
But you connect them all too.
Yeah, it is. It's very
We're going to
good.
take a 3-minute break. And I'm mesmerized by even some of what I knew, but you're giving the context in a really fleshy way. No pun intended. It's marvelous. And all that is spinning around, but there's a linear story too. That's good. We'll be right back. Just take a 3-minute break, and you can count on it. We'll be right here.
Vacation rental cons top the list of travel scams reported to Better Business Bureau. Con artists often pretend to own these rentals and try to talk you into paying them directly instead of through a travel company. It may be tempting because scammers will offer a cheaper deal, but the last thing you want to do after taking time off of work and paying for airfare is to get to your destination and learn the home you plan to rent doesn't even exist. Do extra research before buying into an ad you see on social media or online. The free cruise is also a common con. Read the fine print and watch out for add-on fees, taxes, and other charges. And finally, beware of third-party booking sites that claim to sell airfare. You pay with a credit card and then receive a call from the company asking you to verify personal information such as your bank account. In other cases, you're told your flight was canceled and convinced to fork over more money to rebook. To see the full list of vacation scams and how to avoid them, visit bbb.org/travel, and to report a scam, visit bbb.org/scam-tracker.
We are back with historian John Allen, a dear friend from late 80s. How wonderful that is to celebrate today. He signed the Book of Friendship, and we're really reverberating at several levels of gay history in New Haven about community and how strong community can be together. Thank you, John. I'm just having a ball.
Well, it's fun to be able to talk about these things.
You got it down, though, so beautifully. And what else in our little linear 10 featured spots or stories would you highlight?
Well, the fourth one is some of the famous people that have been in New Haven. And we really have some amazing things. I mean, of course, Yale brings in so many international folks and so many queer people, and they really have a wonderful queer presence at Yale University, at all the universities, really, I have to say. Even the Catholic ones tend to have a queer presence in Connecticut. But I think some of the people that I wanted to highlight that have been through. And these are some of the queer icons of our movement. Larry Kramer. Oh, well, let's talk about Judy. We've got Judy Garland up here right now. Judy Garland, she's the godmother of the entire movement. It was her death that really sparked the Stonewall Rebellion. But this is a photograph showing Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland 3 weeks before the official release of The Wizard of Oz. I mean, that's the film that, you know, I mean, we have our award called the Dorothy Awards after The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy. And she was a major movie star. She wasn't performing anything from, they were performing, but they weren't showing The Wizard of Oz at this point. It was actually another show. But of the time period, they would have acts that would come in the middle of in between the performances of the showings and do a performance. And so they were on the low circuit. So they left out of New York, they went to Bridgeport, they went to New Haven, they went up to Boston area. And it was a happening. When they were here, they had pony rides out in the front on College Street. And they had, this was being shown at the Lowe's Poli Theater on Church Street, which is now where Gateway College is. And it was the 102nd largest theater in the country. It sat over 3,000 people, and it was built as a vaudeville house in 1905. It was demolished in the 60s, the early 60s. But it was, they were here, and I mean, that's just 3 weeks before the official release of The Wizard of Oz. I just find that an incredible coincidence. And you can talk to people that were there or had parents that were there and that are still alive now. And it is really, truly an amazing thing. Next, we have Larry Kramer. Larry Kramer, oh, well, no, we have Pauli Murray up. Pauli Murray, this is the newest college at Yale, and it's based on Pauli Murray. There is a documentary about Pauli Murray. She was the very first law degree issued from Yale University, and she was a woman of color. And she was married to a man, but most of her romantic relationships were with women. And she was a prolific writer, and she went to Yale Divinity School. She was an attorney. She was best friends with Eleanor Roosevelt, and she was unapologetic queer, and well, she would be identified now as non-binary, but they named a college after her. And it's unbelievable. And there's a documentary on her that's on Prime, Amazon Prime right now. And it is truly an amazing story. Her story is inspirational. She has become one of my newest heroes. Frederick Douglass and Pauli Murray and Larry Kramer are some of my favorite heroes. And so moving along to Larry Kramer.
But you know, you raise a really beautiful thing for February, which is African American History Month. That's such a beautiful tie-in. There he is. I met him at the church on the green.
Yes, he was a benefactor of the New Haven Pride Center. He's an agitator. He's someone who I've modeled my activism after.
Really?
I've got many of his books are signed by him when we got together. His book, Faggots, which was a groundbreaking at the time period to really explain the queer movement in the 1970s, was used by Tom Hanks when he was doing research for Philadelphia.
Oh my God, what a moving testimony.
And he got his information from Larry Kramer's book. Wow. It's really an incredible. And he gave money to our center. He came and we delivered a keynote speech at our town meeting. And it was him that really helped to propel the queer movement at Yale.
Oh, yeah.
He's an incredible icon. But we have many other people. We have Paul Cadmus, the artist that did the famous show Fleet's Inn. We have Tony Ferriolo, who is a local icon for a trans man who is all about supporting trans youth. And he's got a movie out called A Self-Made Man. He's a prolific speaker, and he's unapologetic of supporting trans children. And I just have the greatest admiration for Tony, and I think he deserves every accolade that he can get. But let's see. And then there's John Boswell, who was a historian, a queer historian, that discovered that in medieval times, queer relations were not just tolerated, they were celebrated liturgically. And of course, you know, why we have had that kind of demonization within the church, I don't understand. When it was at one point, it was considered, same-gender love was considered the pinnacle of love. Marriage was for the transfer of property,
Yep.
but same-gender love was the pinnacle of, was godlike.
Well, don't forget the Greeks. Socrates had his Alcibiades.
Yes.
Achilles had his Patroclus. Come on.
Yes. And you see that when you go to museums,
Yeah.
and including in New Haven, when you go to see the art centers. But then we have our fifth item, which is the Shubert Theater,
Whoa.
with its storied history. And here we have a picture of Liza Minnelli. She won a Tony Award in 1965 for, it was for Flora the Red Menace. And we sent that from New Haven to New York. And she won a Tony Award for that. But so many other people have come through there that are queer icons.
So-
Ethel Merman, John Travolta. And the list just goes on and on over the years.
On the way to Broadway.
And on the way to Broadway. But New Haven also has a lot of other theater, and think of the queer people that have come through in the history of Longworth Theater and Yale Rep.
Oh, yeah.
And the Palace Theater and the Shubert. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
Schubert's so big,
Yeah.
really. That's a required stop.
And then we have the arts. The arts. There's so many art organizations and events and activities that are going on in New Haven. And not the least of them are these world-class museums of the Yale Center for the British Arts. The largest collection of British arts outside of the UK is at New Haven's Yale Center for the British Arts. And one of the things, and then there's the New Haven Art Gallery. Both the addition of the Art Gallery and the British Art Center were designed by Louis Kahn.
Yeah, the same guy.
who was
Yale
very
University
famous.
Art Gallery. Wonderful spot.
One of the things that I think really stands out in the with the art gallery, they have a picture that was done by President Obama's official portrait was done by Kehinde Wiley. And the Yale British Art Center and the Yale University Art Center, which are two distinct organizations, bought this single picture of a that they've not bought. The very first time they've bought a picture together, and it was by a queer artist, Kehinde Wiley. But the thing that I like to point out about New Haven is there's Thornton Wilder.
Oh, yeah.
Is from New Haven and went to Yale,
Yeah.
never married.
Yeah.
We do have a picture. This is considered, our town is considered the best example of American play.
Truly.
And the third act of it was written in Zurich by his love. He and his lover walked around Zurich, Switzerland. Samuel Stewart, who was a tattoo artist, he was a pornographer, he was an artist, he was just a sort of a jack of all trades, and he traveled in the same circle with Thornton Wilder, and Samuel Seward's book. He chronicles his love affair with Thornton Wilder. And Thornton Wilder is buried in Mount Carmel, Hamden, Connecticut.
Yep. This play is reprised over and over and over. It's a perennial favorite. Never gets old.
Never gets old. Considered the best American play ever written.
So fresh.
Then we come to Yale University. I mean, Yale is known as the gay ivy, the queer ivy. And it happened in 1987 when Julie Iovine in the Wall Street Journal, she had no proof, she just claimed it. She said, well, you know, Yale is a gay ivy, and it stuck. And so now it's known, and Rolling Stone magazine used a phrase, they said, 1 in 4, maybe more, because it was 25% of the population was queer. So it is really an interesting
Now
thing. And we do
there's
have a
a
picture
tidbit.
of Yale with the Yale Harkness Library. And there are over 40 groups at Yale, of affinity groups that do that. I don't know if we have the picture of Yale University with the...
Ooh, yeah.
Yes, there we go. And so many just so much queer activity going on in Yale because of that.
Sterling Library is just gorgeous inside.
Yes, it is.
And that filming of Indiana Jones.
Yes, I know. How long ago was that? I remember going and standing there on the sidelines and watching that. It was Chapel Street being converted into a 1950s design. It was really something. But we also have the Beinecke Library, which is one of the top libraries of the world, with a Gutenberg Bible, but it has many, many queer, there are so many different queer archives there, including Alice B. Toklas and Gertrude Stein's, some of their writings and their chairs that were designed by Pablo Picasso that were stitched by them. There's Larry Kramer's works are all there, Thornton Wilder's. I mean, there's just so many things that are in there.
Langston Hughes.
Langston Hughes.
What a beautiful display they put out. The Beinecke. Oh, yeah. And here we are, African American history.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. It is true. But then we come to the opposition. I think no movement, we have to recognize that there are powerful forces that are coming against us. If we can go back to that picture that was just there. This is one of the, the Knights of Columbus is really, it's painful to see this.
Yeah.
Because the Knights of Columbus does so many wonderful things.
It does.
They're a fraternal, the largest Catholic fraternal organization in the world. This is their world headquarters in New Haven.
Of all places.
Yes, and
Can you imagine?
They founded in 1882 at St. Mary's Church with by Father McGivney, and they support people with intellectual disabilities. They give to to Catholic charities around the world. They have a seat in the Vatican. They are just so generous in so many regards, but they are an incredibly homophobic organization.
Vitriolic.
Vitriolic is right. That's a very good word for it.
Absolutely.
And they gave during the Prop 8 to rescind marriage in California. They were the single largest donor of funding for that. And they gave over $15 million around the country to try to stop gay marriage, and the single largest donor, more than the Mormon Church, which is no friend of the queer community either, but the Knights of Columbus, and people that are connected to them have tried to stop the kind of public focus of the queer community in New Haven, including Reverend Howard Nash of St. Bernadette's Church in New Haven, who was leading the charge, what I call our Stonewall movement in 1993, which really provided the spark for starting the New Haven Pride Center. And since it's become known that he was one of the 50 priests that were named in the Hartford Archdiocese that gave $50 million to 150 young men and boys and women who were victimized by Catholic priests.
Yep. And
he was credibly named by them posthumously in 2009. He died in 2003. But, that's the kind of hypocrisy that we are seeing constantly. Like what we just saw recently. The Norwich Archdiocese just paid out $30 million to settle sex abuse claims. So the hypocrisy saying that, children are more at danger going into a Sunday school class than they are going to a drag queen story hour.
For sure.
And we can see this time and again where these priests, and not just Catholic priests, but evangelical pastors are espousing these vitriolic homophobic comments, and yet they're the ones that are, you see that they will be doing that to try to throw people off of what they're actually doing.
Absolutely. And that's the problem with the Christian right. And the religious right overall, which is the book I just gave you to look at because of the toxicity in it, embedded in the hypocrisy, which is really demonizing the young people. And
It's despicable what they're doing to these young people.
It's just awful. So, the times have, in a sense, come into retrograde, which is very bad because it's maybe one step forward, but we've taken 2 steps back, as Lenin said, and we're in deep trouble.
Yeah.
And for the next 3 years plus, unless we marshal our community.
Absolutely. It's about being visible. The single best thing that a queer person can do is stay alive. That's your number one mission, is to stay alive. And then the second thing is to be out. Just your sheer presence, saying, this is who I am. I'm taking up this space here. I'm a queer person. And you know what? I'm a good person. I'm a community-minded individual. We give back to the community. We celebrate community. We celebrate the uniqueness of every individual. And that is what is so despicable about what is occurring now, is this treating people as other and demonizing them.
And there's the deeply embedded hypocrisy that goes on with that, because all you have to do is pull back the curtain.
Yeah.
Speaking of the Wizard of Oz.
You better believe it. That's a wonderful metaphor.
Oh, it's true. It's true. Because, and the curtains will be pulled back.
Yes. I think they are already starting to. Now, we have just 2 more things to finish up.
Not bad timing.
I know. I hope it is good timing. We have bars and businesses.
Yeah.
Now, there are several, bars and businesses. This is actually a poster that took place of Vicki Sue Robinson at the Noodle Rooster, which is now the Von Dome, which is on Hamilton Street in New Haven. It's been there forever. It's been a disco palace for many, many years. It was a Noodle Rooster. There was the Snow Chicken. It was I can't think of some of the other iterations of it.
I can't believe this bit of history. I don't know.
But, they had famous people come in. Vicki Sue Robinson turned the beat around.
Oh.
Grace Jones performed there. My husband remembers going and seeing Grace Jones there perform. And, it really is, it was a place that, people were welcomed, all kinds of people, during really unsettling times, the 1960s and 70s.
Yeah.
They were dangerous times for queer people to be out. And here there's a big nightclub in downtown New Haven. And there are several other nightclubs. There's Gotham City. Out Magazine named it one of the top 50 nightclubs in the country.
Really?
Gotham City, New Haven, on Center Street and Orange in New Haven, down New Haven, still in business. There's 168 York Square, York Street Pub, which was previously it was called the Pub on Chapel Street.
Yeah, I remember that well.
And my husband actually worked there.
Did he?
Yeah, he worked there when it was in 1975.
Personal history.
And unfortunately, it had a fire and then blew up with a gas a stove, blew up. It's now called the Book Trader, there in that spot.
Yeah.
But there's also Partners, and that's where I met my husband 43 years ago. It's still in business.
Yay.
So there's so many.
Wow.
There was Kurtz, which is in the old New Haven Clock Building, which is derelict right now. But there were many things. And then the medical providers in New Haven. There's 5 major medical providers in New Haven. Yale New Haven Hospital, St. Rayfields. There's AIDS Project New Haven. There's Fairhaven Health Clinic. There's the Cornell Scott Health Clinic. And they all have a queer focus with trans services. And I think that's, New Haven, for being a small city, it's got big city problems. AIDS Project New Haven was one of the very first AIDS projects in the country in 1983, when the AIDS crisis was just getting rolling. And we were one of the first in the country, no doubt because of Yale and because of the medical center that was there. But also we have a lot of drug problems in New Haven too. And in the shoreline, where there's affluence, there's drugs. And New Haven and the shoreline, we have huge problems with substance abuse. So it's not just New Haven, it's in tiny towns like Westbrook and Clinton and Guilford and Madison and Old Saybrook.
That's the realization that people are having. I do remember late 80s buddy committees with AIDS Project New Haven that were so wonderful.
It's now called A Place to Nourish Your Health. They wanted to get it because they do more than just AIDS,
Yeah.
but that is the original start of it. And then the last part is kind of a little cheeky, but it's about the executions that occurred in Connecticut
Ooh.
in the 1600s.
Whoa.
We actually had several in New Haven. The very first public execution for homosexuality occurred in New Haven in 1646. But in 1642, there was another execution. This was for what was called sodomy. And sodomy is an umbrella term that refers to homosexuality, but it could also mean bestiality.
Yeah.
And so there was a fella there that was named George Spencer, and he lived from 1600 to 1642 when he was executed. He was hanged in New Haven. And what happened was, he was a servant, he had one eye, and so he was really, he was described as an ugly, bald man. So, I mean, that's a terrible way to describe somebody, but his master had a sow that had piglets, and one of the piglets had one eye. And so the fact that he had one eye, they said, well, he must have fathered this pig, which was, first of all, it's biologically impossible.
Speaking of the witch trials
I
of the
know.
17th century.
And it wasn't until 2015 when a Connecticut judge who likes to research these kinds of histories
Whoa.
discovered this case and said it's biologically impossible. And when you looked at the records, it was really a forced coercion. He was probably tortured to give a false confession. And he was pardoned by the Supreme Court in Connecticut for a crime that happened in his murder occurred in 1642, and he was it was absolved.
Just 300 years later.
Right. And so, but then that leads us to William Plain. Now, I've got a picture here. This is downtown Guilford on
Oh,
the south.
I love it.
The southwestern corner of the green where Page's Hardware is. The entire parcel was William Plain's 2-acre parcel of land. He was one of the original signers of the covenant to create the town of Guilford in 1639. He was one of the 25 signers, I believe 25, original signers. But I like to say that William Plain, he wasn't an A-lister, he was a D-lister. He was a chimney sweep, or a chimney repair person. He helped build the mill pond in Guilford, which is still in operation. And, you know, I used to go, I don't know if you remember this, but when I was in high school, I used to go ice skating on the mill pond. And he was one of the creators of the dam to make the mill pond in the 1639. Well, in 1646, he was starting to have atheistic views. There was some sexual charges. He did have some charges in England and why he had to leave. He had 2 sodomy charges in England, in Sussex, England, when he had to leave. And so he came, and the charges, they went to Governor Winthrop in Massachusetts, and to say, you know, that's, I guess, was the ruling party at that point. At that time, and he was saying, well, just flog him, which would have been appropriate at the time for homosexuality. But the townspeople said, no, he must be executed. And they took him to New Haven and hung him.
Wow.
And I believe it was fabricated because it was more of he was espousing atheistic views and corrupting the morals of children. What they're trying to say now about queer people.
Challenging the bureaucracy.
Yes, it's all
Awful.
that. It's the
Awful.
same thing, just history on a repeat loop.
350.
But it is really fascinating, and to realize that queer history is in every town.
Every town.
Even in tiny towns like Guilford. So it's our mission to make sure that we are gathering these up.
It's a beautiful, beautiful take on an historian's role to keeping stories alive.
Yes,
True.
it is.
By the way, speaking of executions, who now would you imagine meeting of the 5 persons you will meet in heaven of Gay History Connecticut? Who are some of the outliers?
Well, the folks that I just think are iconic are people like Joe Graybars, who was a former state representative from Bridgeport, who was one of only 4 out people in 1990 when his picture was taken and helped propel Connecticut to become the 3rd state to have civil rights protection for queer people.
Joe Graybars.
Graybars.
I remember him well. I was dancing with him at a disco one day, and it was like, wow, this goes back.
He's amazing.
Wonderful guy. And
Yes.
he was a partner for a while with, one of the famous,
One of our good dear friends, David Knapp, I think. I mean, he has given so much money to so many queer organizations around the state and nationally, and to the Boy Scouts. It was just despicable what was occurred to him.
Kicked out of the Boy
Kicked out of
Scouts,
the Boy Scouts. But David he was an Out 100. He was in Out magazine, one of the Out 100 people of 2013, a national magazine, Out 100.
And he is definitely one of the people you'll meet in heaven.
There's Ann Stanback, who was the leader of Love Makes a Family in Connecticut that helped propel the queer marriage movement in Connecticut, who's still living and working up in and existing in Hartford and very involved in the, I think it's called Emmanuel Church, Congregational Church in downtown Hartford on Farmington Avenue. There's people like Selma at Bloodroot in restaurant down in Bridgeport. There's Tony Ferriolo, who is just an incredible resource.
John, I cannot thank you enough. This is repeatable. It is classroom work.
There is so much more. I mean, you have no idea
I have
what we've
no
been
ideas,
uncovering,
right.
and it just keeps coming.
But you know what? This is classroom quality.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yes, it's classroom quality. I can't thank you enough for enhancing the show to the nines. Anyway, you are welcome anytime.
Thank you. Do we have time for a little bonus point in 30 seconds?
30 seconds, yes.
We do. Do you know what the Connecticut state song is?
No.
It's Yankee Doodle. And guess what? Yankee Doodle was founded as a homophobic slur.
Oh, no.
It started because it was a Yankee Doodle dandy. A dandy is an effeminate person. A doodle is somebody that's a fool. And Yankee is who we were. And a Yankee Doodle dandy was somebody that was trying to be elite. And yet they were doing it with their commoner kind of clothing and sticking a macaroni in their hat and calling it a feather. That's what it was. But it was a homophobic slur. And when the British were surrendering, the townspeople were playing the song Yankee Doodle Dandy to reclaim the word, much like we are reclaiming the word queer. Just like other communities reclaim the epithets that are thrown at them.
You're right.
And it's now our state song, and it's born from a homophobic slur.
A state song. John, you are still going strong.
So there we go. So that's our bonus.
Thank you for the bonus. Wow, what a show. Thank you,
Well, it
John.
was a lot of fun.
It was
Always fun.
We are a wrap. Oh, thank you, Mike, for hanging in there. Oh, that was beautiful.
If I'm gone tomorrow and you hear this song today, just remember there is love for you in every note I play. There's an echo in the canyon, a reflection on the sound. When I'm really looking, I can hear you